Hi guys, my name is Shelly Downey and this is take 2 on my case comparison of the 1994 Colorado South Canyon wildfire, also known as Storm King Mountain, and the 2013 Arizona Yarnell Hill Fire. Every day our world faces a variety of threats, and these threats consist of natural disasters such as tsunamis, earthquakes, to man-made threats such as bombing, shootings, the insider threat. These threats have all continued to test the communication and emergency response of many different managements from government institutions to private sectors. And though some have been successful, there have been many failures which put into question leadership and accountability of these management teams. There are 3 essential requirements for managing your way out of a natural storm: a leader, a strategic platform for decision making, and a means to communicate. Leadership determines the successes and failures of an emergency response. Emergency management is a process used to prepare and respond to a crisis. Now, in an emergency management plan, there is mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. There are 4 important questions that must be addressed after a catastrophic event, and that's: what did you know, when did you know it, what did you do about it, and what are you going to do to ensure it never happens again? Now, in my case comparison, there was a lot of lack of preparedness for these wildfires, and the recovery for both of these cases were different in how they were addressed, and I'm going to get into that in a second. I wanted to give you a little bit of background regarding wildfires and wildland firefighters and what they do. So wildland firefighters consist of ground and pounders, hot shots, engine crew, heli-tac, smoke jumpers, air tankers, helicopter pilots. They all work together to form the wildland firefighters. There are also administrative roles as well. And though all these roles are diverse, they are at the same time unified. They are an interagency firefighting force of federal, state, and local wildland firefighters, some of which are from the private sector and some of which are volunteers. And they are called upon the nation to fill all risk roles, including earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, and they also have specialized training in some of these missions. And primarily, even though they fight wildfires, they're also called to do more traditional structured firefighting as well, on top of their normal wildfire tasks. Moving on to the 1994 Colorado South Canyon wildfire, also known as Storm King Mountain. On July 2nd, 1994, lightning ignited a fire west of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, during a drought with record high temperatures and low humidity, which made it the perfect culmination for these wildfires. Fire danger indices were the highest recorded ever in 21 years, and initially the fire began on a ridge, and it was paralleled by 2 deep canyons and was thought to have little probability of spreading. However, dry lightning storms ignited 40 new fires in the BLM's Grand District in the 2 days prior to when the South Canyon fire had started, which required the district to set its priorities on the initial fires that started. The issues during the Storm King Mountain fire were air tankers were requested when these firefighters got there, but a lot of their requests were denied because there were requests in front of theirs because there was other wildfires during this time. Requests for helicopters were made, but none were available, and specific requests were made for additional firefighters and specific crew members, such as Type 2 crews, which are the second highest in firefighting capability, and also, once again, for helicopters, and were, again, denied. Equipment for these firefighters were failing, such as the chainsaws that they used to cut down branches. A lot of them had to leave the scene and respond to their fire departments to repair these chainsaws, and this involves taking either helicopters up there because it's in the woods, so it's not something that's just easily accessible. There was poor communications and delays amongst different firefighter crews because there was many different types of departments that responded to this wildfire. Half of the Prineville Hot Shots team and fellow firefighters arrived after a significant delay due to the confusion at staging base. Pilots had to keep switching from shuttle missions to buckets to cargo, so they were all tied up as well. And radio contact was also infrequent, and at times it was very busy, too much radio traffic. After the Storm King Mountain fire on July 7th, 1994, the interagency team met to investigate the aftermath. The team consisted of 5 interagency fire managers and personnel, and instructions and assignments were given to these members to do 70 interviews, and they also met one to 2 times a day in order to collect their data and discuss the data collected. And the investigation team revealed that the cause of the fire was a combination of fire behavior, incident management, and involved personnel profiles and equipment. No one assessed the reburn from the Gamble Oak. That was not recognized. The fire behavior from previous days could have been predicted based on the topography and the fuels and weather. So a lot of this could have been alleviated. They could have definitely prepared more for what they were about to go into. The wind turbulence and intensity and rapid movement of the fire exceeded the limitations of the firefighters' protective equipment and also prevented effective deployment of their fire shelters. As far as incident management, escape routes and safety zones were deemed inadequate for the burning conditions that occurred. Construction and certain fire lines were seen as hazardous, and most, if not all, the guidelines for their fire line handbook, PMS 410-01, were not carried out. In the Yarnell Hill fire, there's a lot of similarities between the two as far as lack of preparedness and poor communication. On June 28, 2013, a fire began on a high ridge west of Yarnell, Arizona, when lightning ignited these fires. It began on a steep terrain with no vehicle access and was thought to be of minimal spread potential, just like in Storm King Mountain, they underestimated this fire. On the next day, the fire grew as winds began to increase and additional resources were then ordered. The fire had spread northeast as the wind began to shift and the fire moved toward Yarnell. The Granite IHC remained on the ridge southwest of the fire, and were in an area called the Black, which was an area that's already burned. And these personnel who were in this already burned area were thought to have been safe, and the communications team thought that that crew would stay in that area. However, they were wrong, and the crew actually ended up leaving that site, heading southeast toward mostly unburned bush, and they were heading toward another safety zone, but yet the communications team had no idea where they had gone and why they had left. The IHC crew reported that they were entrapped and that they were deploying their fire shelters. However, like I said, no one knew the location of this crew, and even the air tankers above could not locate the crew. So not much is known about the crew's decisions and actions before their entrapment and the deployment of their fire shelters. So during this fire, communication was very difficult throughout the incident, and most of the firefighters were not programmed with necessary tone guards. Crews were forced to fix the problem and develop workarounds in order to effectively transmit their radio communications, and radio traffic at the time was also very heavy. No one understood what the IHC crew members' intentions or movements and locations were once they left their safety area, and it's believed that it is a result from informal and vague radio communication. The fire itself was already complex and became very complex over a short period of time, so that also didn't work out to their favor. Aerial attacks and supervision were provided. However, the aerial team was busy with other lead plane duties, which affected their ability to provide and perform a full air attack responsibilities. Some aircraft were also unavailable due to weather conditions for these crew members. So the aftermath of this fire, the state of Arizona assembled a serious accident investigation team to review and report the conditions leading to the entrapment of these IHC crew members. They drew from their own knowledge of wildfire operations and culture utilized data resources and methods to recreate the events. However, these personnel were not certified to investigate wildfires, so there was a lot of controversy there. Yarnell Hill had not experienced a wildfire in over 45 years, which made it a prime area for wildfire because of the extreme drought, cured grass, and chaparral. Fire management endured many different types of transitions from type 4 to type 1 incidents in less than 20 hours. So it was very chaotic and hectic because they weren't sure what was going on with this fire because it escalated so quickly. Retired U.S. Forest Service firefighter Roy Hall was the incident commander at the time, and he stated that there's nothing we could have done differently that day that would have necessarily have changed the outcome. Apparently, Yarnell Hill had been in discussion since the 1970s because it was an area that was extremely flammable. The Arizona Division of Occupational Safety and Health, ADOSH, cited the Arizona Forestry Division and fined them $559,000, which included $25,000 for each of the deceased hotshot crew members' families. Now, the IHC crew members that passed away in this fire, their bodies were moved off the site within 24 hours, and the community as well as the families were deeply affected by this and pretty much outraged too because they thought that the deputies rushed this investigation and, as I said earlier, did not feel that these investigators were qualified to address wildfire scene investigators. The family and the community were also upset because a lot of things were left unanswered and unaddressed, and there's more that could have been learned from the fire, such as the position of the firefighters, you know, when they passed away, the tools that they were using, their fire shelters that were deployed. A lot of these things could have been studied and to help prevent future mistakes, but as I said earlier, their bodies were removed off the site within 24 hours, so a lot couldn't really be studied or learned from this in order to help with future events. The magnitude and speed of the fires at Storm King Mountain and Yarnell Hill were both underestimated. There was definitely a lack of effective leadership, communication, and appropriate tools, combined with the implementation of poor policies and procedures, which contributed immensely to these tragic incidents. Now, in an emergency management plan, I stated that there's mitigation, preparedness, and prevention, response, and recovery. Now, these are things that constantly need to be updated and improved. It's not just something you address one time. It's always changing. And in these fires, their lack of planning for, I guess, the worst case scenario was definitely evident. There was no structured plan set in place. Equipment was not addressed appropriately, and even the recovery, I would have to say, was poor in the Yarnell Hill fire, only because they were so quick to address getting the bodies off of the land and not truly assessing what happened. In Storm King Mountain, they actually had an investigative team of experienced personnel who deal with wildfires every day, and were able to conduct a study and do interviews and really understand what happened that day. And as I said, in the Yarnell Hill fire, they were very quick to dismiss a lot of that, which, like I said, could have definitely helped with planning for future events that may happen. There was a lot to be learned, and still a lot to be learned. So that is my presentation on the case comparison of Storm King Mountain and the Yarnell Hill fire. Thank you.